Do you know what day it is today?
April 30th?
How have I been doing this for nearly 5 years and have never made a Metal Gear themed character run? That one doesn't count. I have gotten many suggestions over the years for it, mind you, for a multitude of games and characters, and as I keep mentioning, I wanted Ocelot New Vegas to be the first, but due to that recording error, that's on the back burner for a while. One of the snakes would be an obvious choice, but seeing how I cannot see it being all too different than the New Vegas While Hidden video, I eventually just landed on having Pretty Boy Raiden be the star of the show today. Now, what does a Raiden run entail? Well, if we want to get technical and use all versions of the character as a basis, then I essentially have access to a large number of firearms, a sword, my bare hands, and a few other melee weapons. So, while I could just run around Metal Gear Solid 2 style with a silenced pistol for the entire video, I am also not an idiot. Most people are more familiar with Raiden as a cybernetic ninja from Metal Gear Solid 4 and Rising. I figured the main goal of the run will be to work up to that as well as I can. Meaning, other than just beating the main quest so the title isn't invalid, I will also need to procure a katana, get all the cybernetic implants from the New Vegas clinic, as well as the ones from the Old World Blues DLC. And then, due to it being the closest thing that he wears in the games, I will also be limiting myself to the Stealth Suit Mark II. I can also run around naked if I wish, as that is by far one of Mr. Lightning Bolt's most infamous scenes. One final bonus rule for lore accuracy: once I get my first cybernetic implant, I cannot use guns anymore. Not really gonna make things any more difficult, mind you, but I figured why not. As, after all, by the time Rising rolls around, the only firearms he uses is the occasional RPG. I think that about covers the lot, so with all that out of the way, let's begin. First off, name. It's Jack, of course. But we are on a mission after all, so we will be changing it to Raiden for all communications from here on out. Creation was a bit of a nightmare. I don't know why, but every time I tried to make him look like Raiden, he kept ending up like liquid. I made do with what I had, and now it was on to the fun part. My stats had a focus on endurance, agility, and luck. Endurance was simply to gain access to all the cybernetic implants, as the higher it is, the more your body can take. We can easily get it to 10 though with one round of intense training, along with the endurance implant itself. As for agility and luck, well, Raiden is rather quick on his feet, plus he was trained for sneaking missions, and the higher the agility stat, the more points in sneak you start with. Luck is as it sounds. The man is remarkably lucky with all of the times he has survived multiple near-death experiences. You may be a little concerned with strength only being at 5, but again, the cybernetics will fix that up nicely. I tried to answer Doc Mitchell's questions how I figured Raiden would respond, although no option to say that this one looked like Snake is quite the oversight. All in all, 2 out of 3 skills were appropriate for the character, so that's not bad. The only thing I changed was science for Sneak for obvious reasons. Although, to be fair, guns would also have been fine. Finally for traits, and I go with skilled and small frame. Skilled, cause he is, and small frame because despite having a state-of-the-art cyborg body, Raiden is constantly getting injured and losing his limbs. Once we are allowed to leave, as per usual, the first thing that I do is drop everything on my person. After all, Raiden is no stranger to procuring weapons on sight, as well as running around in the complete nude. As soon as I get outside, my first plan was to procure a weapon. While, yes, my fists are okay to use for the run, and are decent enough for punching coyotes for the time, I'd rather get something more substantial as early as possible. Fortunately, the abandoned shack outside of town has just what I need, an old banged up machete. After all, you can unlock and use one in Rising, so this is fair game in my eyes. It will almost certainly be immediately replaced by the katana once I find who is selling it this time, but considering that that is random, I may get more use out of the machete whether I want to or not. I put it to use right away on the bark scorpions and centaurs around Hidden Valley and Black Mountain. As per usual, they are some of the easiest enemies to kill this early on that give a sizable chunk of XP, so it's a quick way to get my first level. This early on, all of that is of course going to be focused on upping my melee damage. Or at least that was the initial plan, but as it turns out, the final strike I land on the last centaur is also the one that shatters the blade, so I guess it makes more sense to up my punching prowess first instead. My first perk point, however, is into intense training and endurance to raise it to 9. This will of course then allow me to max out the stat once I make my way to the New Vegas Medical Clinic, and in turn be strong enough to get every other implant available. Anyway, I had planned to take on Tabitha, but with the machete gone, I don't exactly fancy my chances. So it was back to Goodsprings, where I did a little exploring around the school, as well as purchasing a silenced .22 pistol. While again, guns would technically be viable given Raiden's background, let it be known I never ended up using any. The short-term goal now was to make my way to the Mojave outpost so I could get the machete fixed. The pistol was just a backup should I need something to defend myself with on the way. Despite the fact my fists were more than capable of doing that, given that all I ran into on the way was a few geckos and a single feral. At the outpost, and due to the machete being an early game weapon, it only costs 100 caps to repair it to full, which not only surprised me, but seemingly everybody else in the building. While in the area, I also grabbed the exterminator quest for Jackson. But even better, I can buy a backup machete from Lacey, as well as sell her all of my useless junk, which brings me just under 2,000 caps. Money is going to be incredibly important in the early to mid stages of the run. After all, it is going to cost us 48,000 caps just to get all of the cybernetic implants from the clinic. With the 2 machetes in hand, I quickly dispose of the ants for Jackson, as I am known to do, as well as the nearby rad scorpions, cause why not? They are rather effective melee weapons, despite being something you would typically want to replace as soon as. That said, after retrieving my reward, I still make a point to be on my way for Freeside, as it has the greatest number of merchants in a condensed area, therefore has the best possible chance of being the place to find the katana. The reason I am so hell-bent on getting it now is that I wanted to tackle Old World Blues as soon as possible. The act of simply entering the Big MT gets you 3 cybernetic organs, so it was naturally a requirement of today's run. The fact that it's one of the DLCs where you are stuck there until your task is finished, well, that is the reason that I want to be as prepared as possible. Plus, I suppose it's also going to be where we get our armor set for the run, and the less time we must mimic the arsenal gear scene from MGS2, the better. I hit up Repcon on the way to Freeside. No point not to, it's some easy loot that once I make it to the Gunrunners can sell to bring us to just a little over 3,000. The katana itself can be rather pricey, so this initial influx of money is for that specifically. I could gamble for the money, sure, but I didn't feel like that today. Selling weapons and armor, along with collecting the snow globes for house, would be more than enough. Plus, it'll help with the pace and my sanity if I'm not just sitting around gambling in 4 different locations for close to an hour. After dealing with the Gunrunners, I decided to wait till morning so that the other vendors in Freeside would be ready to wheel and deal. But in doing so, I summoned a nightmare creature that appeared to me in the form of Malcolm Holmes's tongue. Wasn't quite sure how to deal with the abomination, but it fortunately took care of that problem as it deleted itself from the game world the instant it finished delivering its message. I love this game. Mentally scarred from that ordeal, the game decides to throw me a bone in the form of the katana appearing in the very first merchant's inventory that I decided to check. All in, the katana skins me 3,615 caps, which is rather steep this early on. But, considering it's going to be with us from here to the credits, it is most certainly worth the investment. Thanks to making my way to the Black Mountain Crater and Repcon, I was able to fix up a decent suit of power armor. Selling that, along with all the ammo I've gathered thus far, drops the price by about 2,000 caps. So, at the very least, we aren't broke yet. I wanted to keep some cash lying around to see if anybody else was selling the mods for the katana. Long story short, nobody in Freeside was selling spare sword parts, so we are fresh out of luck. Granted, it's not like I need them right now. The blade is sharp enough on its own to get a home run with this man's arm. I reached level 4 here, so now's the time to focus on that melee damage. I also take another rank in intense training, this time for strength. I put that strength to use right away as I start getting in some practice with the blade on the ants near Nipton. They were never going to pose a threat to me, but consider them a starter for the upcoming main course. That being Volpe's group in the town centre. Shocking no one, Mr. My Sword is a Tool of Justice is willing to get his hands dirty with no holds barred when it comes to encountering the Legion. I'm also pretty sure the Legion makes use of child soldiers, and if Metal Gear Rising is anything to go by, once you start that shit, Raiden is going to descend on you faster than you can say
Nanomachine, son!
Volpes was one shot by the Katana special VATS move, making him the weakest member of the crew. That's not to say the rest were substantially better, don't be absurd. The Katana still cut them up faster than an onion on an infomercial. Once justice had been dispensed, it was back to Major Knight to see about some costly repairs. The blade gets nicked rather easily, I'm afraid, so expect frequent trips back to the Mojave outpost. Despite being under the recommended level, I said screw it and fiddled with the satellite so we could get the ball rolling on Old World Blues. Ignoring the cybernetic implants we're mainly here for, it also deals with a decent amount of stuff familiar to the Metal Gear series like AI, giant robots, and long cutscenes and dialogue exchanges. In fact, I need to watch the initial slideshow twice, as my game crashed the instant I loaded into the big MT before I even had a chance to save, and it is in fact an unskippable cutscene for some reason. Old World Blues always gives me trouble on the performance side of things, so this shall be fun. Unlike Metal Gear, I am skipping through the dialogue. I've heard it many times before, and I just want to get a move on. That said, this is the exchange where we are told about our replaced brain, heart, and spine. 3 implants down, about 10 to go. I speak with the members of the think tank to get my 3 main missions because, again, just like in Fallout 3's DLCs, these things always come in threes for some reason. And then I set off on my adventure. I figured going for the X-13 stealth training facility first made the most sense. Not just due to stealth being one of my dominant stats, but again, that's where the Stealth Suit Mark II is. Now, I could go and get the Stealth Suit Mark I from Dead Money, but I don't like Dead Money, and the Mark II is naturally better, so why would I bother? Well, New Vegas is a sentient creature and hates when you talk smack about it, so I take a grand total of 2 feet after that statement before the game implodes on itself yet again.
It's like being in a nightmare you can't wake up from.
First real combat encounter of the DLC is against 2 cyberdogs. It's been so long, I genuinely forgot they had range capabilities and was taken aback by the damage it laid on. This also got me thinking that Rex would technically be viable for today, wouldn't he? After all, Raiden gets his own robot pooch in the form of Blade Wolf in Rising, and Rex is the closest thing. Well, we can get around to that once I journey back to the Mojave. For now though, I must contend with Night Stalkers and Lobotomites. The Lobotomites are fine enough, most use melee weapons, and as such are easily put in their place by the katana when they get too close. The Night Stalkers though attack in groups and can whittle my health bar down in seconds. On the bright side, I am quick enough without any armor on to back up and avoid most of their attacks, all the while still slicing and dicing. Another bright spot is that killing these final few lets me complete the Castlevania reference Gunrunners challenge, which in turn gets me enough XP to reach level 6. Once more, all into melee, and then for the perk this time, it's something different as I take Hunter. Truly, toughness for the defense would have been the safer choice, but Hunter lets me do an additional 75% critical damage to all animals, mutated or otherwise, and considering I will be running into more cyberdogs and Night Stalkers, this seemed like the best time to pick it up. It helped a bit, I guess, but the second wave of Night Stalkers made sure that I felt like a fool for not going with toughness instead. Oh, there was also the skeleton spacemen with their plasma weapons hanging around this part of the neighbourhood. Nothing too taxing, but felt it was worth bringing up. Not long after breaking their bones, I made it to the X-13 facility and claimed my prize. The stealth suit is actually in a few pieces when you arrive, so you have to grab them all and put it together. Not sure why, as they're all within very close proximity to one another, so it's not difficult, it's just something you have to do. Upon rebuilding the suit, you are informed it will pump you full of medics and stimpaks, should you have them at your disposal. So it's very similar in function to the prototype medic power armor from Fallout 3. And just like that set, the sneaking suit also comes with an onboard AI that likes to speak with you, only this time it comes with crippling social anxiety and a bad case of FOMO should you unequip it. In other words, it's highly relatable. With the suit equipped and the katana in hand, I've pretty much secured my gear for the remainder of the run outside of perhaps a few mods for the katana, and of course the implants. Naturally, I put the suit through its paces by taking part in the stealth tests around the facility. All you gotta do is make it through a small section of the building without getting spotted. Do this up to 3 times with increasingly challenging stipulations like patrolling guards and turrets, and before you know it, you will have finished the entire exercise. It should be noted that you get just an insane amount of experience each time you complete one of these tests. So much so it gets me to level 8, max melee weapons, and the creme de la creme, the Super Slam perk. Also, finishing all levels of the infiltration test adds some nice buffs to the stealth suit, such as +1 to both perception and agility, 25 to sneak, and best of all, a 20% increase to your sneaking speed. Honestly, the only real downside of the suit, in my opinion, is that it's medium armor. If it was a light armor set, you could push this even further with perks like Travel Light and Tunnel Runner. Alas, that is not the case, so Raiden shall not be Mach 4 Rudy running like it's Gears of War anytime soon. Looking at the glass half full though, it being a medium set does mean I'll have more protection. This is good, as its defensive capabilities are immediately tested by the approaching swarm of Robo-Scorpions. The katana barely scratches the scorpions, which caught me by surprise. That said, I am trying to slice through metal, so maybe it does make sense. Regardless, this would have been an absolute travesty if I hadn't just got the Super Slam perk. While the blade may not damage them all that much per swing, its sheer speed allows me to proc the perk multiple times in quick succession, rendering even the biggest of the robots unable to retaliate. This is good because from this point on, the DLC will continue to keep throwing them at me in groups until I decide to leave. At this point I decided to do some exploring and ended up at the Cuckoo's Nest. In the cave I contended with more test subjects and lobotomites. Arguably this was barely a footnote in the journey, but I figured it was worth mentioning simply for the weapons that they dropped. Their unarmed weapons and proton axes, once fixed up, could be sold back at the sink for a good chunk of change. I also grabbed the module for the toaster while I was out, so after he is done with his ranting, I can use him to superheat the Saturnite fist so that it may sell for even more money. Once all my spoils are sold, I'm up to 7,000 caps, so well on our way to the end goal. Back to the matter at hand, it's off to the other test sites, but not before I disarm more of the lobotomites for their fist weapons. You know, it just occurred to me this is almost like how on Rising you steal specific people's left hands to get upgrades. What are the odds? Continuing on to grab the X2 antenna for the think tank, as it was the next closest objective, I decided to complete another in-game challenge for the hell of it. This one just requires you to try and leave the perimeter of the big MT twice. Doing so will cause you to teleport back to the sink, so it's not dangerous. Or at least, it's not supposed to be. Back to the antenna, and it's only guarded by Protectrons. Yeah, by far the easiest out of the 3 tasks. With the DLC becoming increasingly more stable, I figured I'd just make a beeline for the XA facility and get it over and done with. Not much to go over, it's actually very similar to the stealth one in that you need to make your way through an ever-evolving test area to collect some items. Only difference is this time you're allowed to cut loose and murder everything in sight. Certainly made it go by a lot faster, that's for sure. After you run through once, you can get the actual main objective, which is to head down to another part of the facility where you must put down Gabe the dog. This is not so much a mercy killing as much as it's a fight for survival, given that Gabe is much bigger than the average dog and will likely use Raiden as a chew toy if given half the chance. Fortunately, much like the Roboscorps, he is very susceptible to being knocked on his ass. This won't be the last time I bring this up today, I assure you. Thinking about it in post, you technically don't need to kill Gabe, as all you need is his bark audio frequency sample, which can be found in one of his dig spots. Ah well. Oh, and for the record, I tried. I really did try to go back and do the other levels of the training facility, but I shit you not, every time I activated the door to take me there, the game would just crash. This happened about 6 times in a row before I just gave up. If for nothing else, I will at least praise it on being consistent. At this point, I just went around grabbing the rest of the modules for the machines in the sink. Was it worth it? Not really. About all that it was good for was the extra XP from all the killing, plus I was able to do the glitch to reselect my same traits again so I can get yet another 5 points from the skill trait. I have no shame. Other noteworthy aspects of my journey around the big MT included having the foresight to mark the forbidden zone on the map, now to cut down on backtracking later, as well as having Super Slam uproot a spore plant. I was just simply unaware that could happen. After this, I ran into even more crashes because this DLC is a plague on my hard drive, reached level 14, and then decide to end it all. As in, the DLC. This presents by far the most challenging fight of Old World Blues by a country mile, that of course being the X-42 giant Robo-Scorpion. Seems rather fitting, easily the closest thing to a Metal Gear New Vegas, so it needs to die. No Stinger missiles at my disposal, which is mildly concerning, just means I'll need to get up close and personal. With only 3 cybernetic implants so far, we aren't quite at Rules of Nature Rising Raiden levels yet, more like MGS4 Raiden. So yes, while still strong, we aren't nigh unkillable and tossing bipedal nuclear war machines around like playthings. This is made apparent when I attempt to rush it multiple times at that, all of which follow a very similar pattern to say the least. After smashing my head against this wall for a while, I begrudgingly give in and tackle things by using my noggin in a different way. By making my way around the area and not dying in the process, I can activate some terminals and the like, the best of which was summoning some backup in the form of a bunch of Protectrons. They prove there is strength in numbers, by which I mean there's enough of them that while the Scorpion is preoccupied systematically tearing them all new ones, I can sneak up behind the cyber arachnid and get in a few well-placed sneak criticals to help even the playing field. Once we enter the caution state and the crits stop proccing, I just start slashing away to quickly whittle away at the rest of his health and easily win the fight. The explosion after the fact nearly gave me a heart attack, so he can rejoice in getting the last laugh, I suppose. All that leaves is Dr. Morbius, who this time around I am murdering on the sole premise that he shares a voice actor with Liquid Snake from Metal Gear Solids 1 and 2. Maybe a tad cruel, but not to worry, I extend the exact same courtesy to the entirety of the think tank upon my return. They took my brain, they cannot be allowed to do that to anybody else, thus they must die. It's as simple as that. Shocking no one, the brain jars do not put up much of a fight. I mean, I say that, but they very nearly managed to get the best of me as I was completely unaware that I ran out of stim packs before the encounter. God, that would have been embarrassing. Anywho, once they are dealt with, it's another unskippable slideshow, one in which I am praying the entire time does not freeze, lest I must sit through it twice again. Luck is on our side for once in this DLC, and we make it through without having to reboot the whole damn game. The very second I get control, I do drop a save just to be safe, and with that, we are done with Old World Blues and the Big Mountain. Grossly overprepared for the New Vegas early game, there's no time like the present to knock out some of the initial quests of the story. To that end, it's off to Prim, where I make ridiculously short work of the woefully underprepared convicts. In their defense, how were they supposed to know a blonde-haired cyborg ninja pretty boy was going to just stroll into town seeking revengeance for the townsfolk? On the topic of the citizens of Prim, I strike gold when speaking with Nash, because as luck would have it, he is the one who is in possession of a high-frequency blade upgrade for the katana, which is rather substantial seeing how it increases its overall damage by 5. Might not seem like much, but consider the speed we already have behind the blade, along with 2 other DPS upgrades on the horizon, and let's just say we are about to turn Jack the Ripper into Jack the Blender.
I think it's time for Jack to let...
For those of you curious, we do rescue the puppy trapped in the motel, and then hand the town off to the NCR. After all, Raiden was in the military most of his life. You could argue Independency and Yes Man makes more sense, what with the whole I've got my own wars to fight, but I like to think that's eventual character development we can dive into should I try a version of this run in Fallout 4 down the line. And, spoiler alert for when that happens, I have a good bunch of Metal Gear mods for that one specifically to spice things up. That is, assuming they didn't all get purged with the next-gen update to the game last year. Back to the matter at hand, Johnson Nash didn't have the cash to buy all my junk from the Big MT, so I made my way back for Good Springs, as it was close and had multiple vendors to hopefully squeeze some funds out of. By the time I am done with Chet, Doc and Trudy, I am sitting pretty close to 20k caps. I thank them for funding my inevitable cyberization by sufficiently and albeit effortlessly dealing with the dynamite fetishist I thank them for funding my inevitable cyberization by sufficiently and albeit effortlessly dealing with the dynamite fetishists harassing the town. Fuck! I thank them for funding my inevitable cyberization by sufficiently and albeit effortlessly dealing with the dynamite fetishists harassing the town. They already got Easy Pete out in the porch, they don't need any more bombers coming to stay. No real sense of direction, because I guess I'm just putting off the main quest for some reason, so I made my way for Black Mountain. As we all know by now, I'm an XP whore galore. To switch things up for a change, I do take the normal path up the mountain, as opposed to phase shifting my way through the gate and door to teleport in behind Tabitha. Granted, being on the precipice of level 16 already, and a build that is all but complete, allows me to make remarkably short work of the mutants on the path. The Nightkin could have taken me by surprise, but fortunately the stealth suit alerted us to them before they even had a chance to land their first blow. The Sniper with Annabelle could have spelled my doom, but he ended up proving more of a liability to his fellow mutants, seeing how he got them caught in the first blast. I won't pretend like this didn't hurt me, well, that was more so the next missile, but you see, when I was back bartering in Goodsprings, I made a point to stock up on some healing supplies after I ran out in Big Empty. With the Stimpaks hotkeyed for ease of use, as Folly 4 having them defaulted to being down on the D-pad has spoiled me, I was able to essentially tank the explosion in a way, as I mend my broken bones with my miracle healing syringes. By now I have closed the gap on the Sniper, making him think twice about using his explosive artillery, meaning the fight is now in my favour. All that remained was Tabitha, and while a menace in her own right with that super sledge, she is simply just not fast enough to stand a chance against this coked up former child soldier. Also, much like how I avoided tackling this quest via the backdoor method prior, I made sure to goad Tabitha into a fight this time around by rescuing Raoul, as that causes her to rush down out of her radio station and fight you head on with some backup. Ultimately, it didn't change much in the end. Just look at how much damage she and her fellow Nightkin were able to do. With the quest completed, I level up, and rather ironically now that I think about it, grab the perk that lets me do more damage to super mutants and the like. Initially, I was wondering if I'd even get much use out of it, but then on my way to Novak via the cliffs near Nipton, I stumbled a little too close to the old nuclear test site and had to contend with an entire horde of ferals. Considering some of them were Reavers, I can say I definitely made the right call picking up the Purifier perk when I did. Thankfully, Reavers aren't the absolute damage sponges that they were back in Fallout 3, so the sword can cut them up with relative ease. They're more like glass cannons now, I guess, as like the majority of ghouls in New Vegas, they hit harder than you tend to think for humans with most of their muscles that have wasted away. I saved the powder gangers for the booted quest while I'm in the area as well. If for nothing else, it allows Raiden to stick it to the Legion a little bit more, which I assume pleases him greatly. Finally, I arrive in Novak. The reason for all of this was to check with Cliff Briscoe for one of the katana mods. And of course, after all that, he does not have any. The one good part about all of this is, you guessed it, more vendors to offload my crap to. We are now at 27,000 caps by the way, so we're over halfway. With Cliff being a dud, I continue following the intended path. Not much to see here, some Vipers who thought they were hot shit because one of them was packing a grenade launcher, as well as my burning hatred for the nearby ants shining through in full force. Something I probably should have mentioned, I need to be level 30 before the end of this run for one very specific perk. It does not matter when I hit level 30 for the record, just that it needs to happen. Hence why, even now, I'm still somewhat scrounging for XP alongside caps. Believe it or not, I still had a handful of items lying around from the DLC, so after getting rid of them, we were only 15,000 away from our goal. I was off to Hoover Dam now to make a very brief stop to grab the snow globe, but on the way I get sidetracked by the events in Boulder City. Seeing how one of the proposed methods for saving the hostages is a stealth mission, I thought it would be rather fitting. I even made use of a stealth boy to mimic the stealth camel from Metal Gear. It allowed me to take one of the cans by surprise, but the others actually had eyes worth a damn, so they weren't so easily fooled by the clear shimmering outline of a person skulking around. None of them prove a threat, mind you. Give Jessup his dues though, he is one of the few people thus far who hasn't succumbed to Super Slam, so good for him. With them out of the way and the snow globe retrieved, I made my way back to Vegas to check with the Gunrunners, Blake and Mick and Ralph for more upgrades. Alas, none of them had what I was looking for. As is to be expected, they are always in the very last place you decide to look. This time around, that was the Silver Rush. Can you blame me for not checking in with them sooner? They only sell energy weapons. Not exactly the place I think of first when it comes to looking for a new sword grip. Regardless, it's incredibly cheap, so I don't think twice about buying it. This is the first of two things that will increase our overall attack speed with the katana permanently, and already I am noticing it is quite the improvement. Before heading onto the strip proper, I make sure to grab the snow globe from the Followers of the Apocalypse. This, combined with the one from Goodsprings and the misplaced one, the Lucky 38 itself, gets me another 8,000 caps richer, and just barely off being able to afford the implants. I head on over to the clinic right away and just get the final remaining funds by handing over Dr. Morbius's scrubs. With money in hand, I go from riches to rags in a matter of minutes, but in the process increase every special stat by 1 point permanently, as well as gaining a boost to my natural armour and a permanent, albeit slow passive health regen at all times. Collecting all the funds for that wasn't as bad as I thought. Truly, the only tedious part was the constant slow fading to black after every enhancement, along with having to hear the same lines repeated over and over.
You're back, you're back, you're back, you're back.
My back!
With the implants online, I am essentially full cyborg Raiden, so it was time to get cracking on the main story stuff. At least for now. To that end, it was off to the tops to deal with Benny. Having followed things rather straightforwardly, I have enough evidence to convince Swank that Benny's a snake, so after a quick roundabout trip to his private suite, I can get my weapons back and see about dealing with this how I see fit. I could have had him sent up to his room like a misbehaved child, but I figured I've pumped enough points into stealth that there's no reason I can't just take him out here, right? Well, that was easy. At level 18, and the points are getting tossed into whatever now that my main skills are all but topped off. As for perks, well, there is still a good selection there. Seeing how my luck is even higher now thanks to the implants, I figured going for better criticals to improve my crit damage was actually a good idea. That's not to say I'm not just tearing through everything already, but hey, why not get even more damage out of the katana? Considering what I have planned next, every little helps. First off, I return the chip to house and agree to help him upgrade the Securitrons down at the fort. You may be confused considering I said I was mostly siding with the NCR today. Well, I figured getting tricked by an older man with a greenish filter over him was rather relatable to certain events in Sons of Liberty, so decided to go along with him just for now. Plus, the only good legionary is a dead legionary. Oh yeah, House may be all against harming Caesar, and by extension his men at the Cove and Fort, but nobody can stop Raiden when it comes to serving justice. My plan initially was to stealthily take down the Legion for what it's worth, but after taking out only 2 soldiers, that plan backfired massively in my face. No matter, despite eternally cosplaying as Roman soldiers, not one of the Legion's troops is able to offer me even a modicum of a challenge when it comes to sword fighting. Those at the fort don't fare much better, in case you are wondering. It should be noted that quite some time ago I did pick up the Piercing Strike perk, which allows me to ignore 15 points of a target's damage threshold. When you take a moment to consider that the Legion favour light and medium armour sets, all of which tend to offer less than 15 points of overall protection, then it means I am essentially running around a camp butchering a bunch of naked people. This also extends to the fight with Caesar and his guard in the tent. True, they do hit harder, and there are more of them, but this can be circumvented with careful use of Blade mode, along with a small helping of Ripper mode. Having saved Caesar from death by brain tumour by simply removing his entire head, we have left the Legion rudderless, so to speak. So all we must do is wipe out a few remaining stragglers before proceeding on with House's plans to upgrade. Returning to the Lucky 38, and he is pleased with my work and instructs me with recruiting the boomers next. Fortunately, that aligns with our first task for the NCR as well, so we can kind of continue to play both sides. Mind you, House has bigger things to worry about than me playing nice with the NCR, such as changing the locks on the front door, seeing how Emily Ortle was able to just stroll on in without a care in the world. Despite her being literally in the building next to the computer, I still agreed to be the one to plant the device. This is because I was like 10 XP away from reaching level 20. With this, I can finally take the ninja perk, and therefore I am now, by all technicalities, a cyborg ninja. Plus, the 15% crit chance boost with melee weapons and sneak attacks doing an extra 25% is also great. Back to the main quest, and it's off to Nellis. Not much to go over here, it's about the same as usual. Although I would like it to be known that this is one of the very few times I let George live and even agreed to play along in his little death game. For whatever reason though, once he agreed and took my money, he just booked it full force into the blast zone and was vaporized in seconds. On to the boomers, and like I said, it's nothing too out of the ordinary. Being level 20 has allowed me to reach the threshold for just about all of their skill checks, so I can just fly through most of their quests as fast as possible. Some I do still take the long way around, like killing the ants in the generator room myself, rather than with the aid of loyal Sonic Emitter. Also, one of my main priorities was to get Jack's love life in order, Even without him and Raiden sharing the same name, I feel like that hits a little too close to home with his own character development alongside Rosemary. All of this leads to raising the bomber naturally. Despite helping him out earlier, I did not pester Jack for the rebreather. My endurance was more than high enough to be able to hold my breath throughout the entire ordeal.
We've managed to avoid drowning.
That's tremendous. I'll transmit instructions to the robots to start packing up the plane to bring it back to Nellis.
With the boomers now willing to die for us, it was onwards and upwards to our next task on my invisible checklist. Loyal mentioned Helios 1 in passing when I was fixing up the solar arrays, and that got me thinking. Stopping weapons of mass destruction is pretty in line with Metal Gear storytelling, so I could take some time out of my day to make sure that nobody gets their hands on an orbital space laser, regardless of how finicky it may actually be. We get with talking with Ignacio and Fantastic to get things started, the latter of which I am still holding out hope for is who Macaulay Culkin will be playing in the second season of the show. As I am just disabling the laser and spreading the electricity among the less fortunate areas, this quest doesn't take all that long. Granted, I'd be singing a different tune if I had attempted this earlier, what with all the turrets, gutsy, and sentry bots protecting the area with the controls. The AI is getting smarter in real time though, as they begin attacking my eardrums directly through the screen. When we make it up top to the controls, we learn two things. Firstly, we'd need to wait till peak sunlight hours to reactivate the facility. I mean, makes sense, but I just genuinely was unaware that was a thing. And secondly, that the NCR guarding Helios 1 may just be the most incompetent set of soldiers in the whole army, seeing how a band of Legion assassins was able to waltz right on through the front doors by them and attack me in the tower. Now, they fare about as well as the others who tried before them, one of them even slipping to his death over the railings like an absolute klutz. Even still, the Legion isn't exactly hard to pick out in a crowd. Feel like they shouldn't have gotten this far. The incompetence of the NCR aside, we finish the quest and spread the power equally among the poor. This doesn't affect our standing with the NCR in any way either, so that's good. All this talk of preventing the use of WMDs has got me thinking. There is truly no better quest to tackle for this run than Lonesome Road. Think about it. It's filled with long dialogue exchanges where the main villain spouts off about his past and ideals. There's a climactic showdown with said villain where you fight them mano-a-mano in CQC, and you even get to stop all-out nuclear war. It's literally perfect. With that said, it's off to the Divide. For once in one of these runs, I'm actually good when it comes to the suggested level, so I can't see much stopping me. Maybe the Deathclaws. After grabbing Eddie, I'm able to rush through the Hopeville silo section with ease. A couple of sentry bots are plastered around the place along with some turrets. In a realistic scenario, I'd be reduced to atoms trying to fight these bulky bots with nothing but a sword, but fortunately, New Vegas is anything but realistic. One of these days, I promise I'll do a melee run where I take neither Piercing Strike or Super Slam, just to see how effective they still are. We hit level 21 after all that, not much to go over, just tossing some points towards lockpicking for now. May come in handy, may not. Guess we'll see. Outside, and we get our first dialogue exchange with Ulysses. Most people like to say all of this is just bare bull, then repeat ad nauseum, and truly they may be right. Could be a little different this time, who can say, I am skipping past most of it. The story is fine for the DLC, and honestly Lonesome Road is probably my favourite of the bunch, if only for the reason you can leave and come back whenever you please. But still, I've travelled these roads enough times that I'm just here to get to the fighting, the stabbing, and the ending of the second round of Nuclear Armageddon. The marked men who will be our main adversaries for this 2-hour romp are a colourful bunch. Well, not literally, they are as red as me that one time I went outside for more than 2 minutes in a temperature above 15 degrees. We ain't built for warmth over here, we are built for rain, wind, and having a high alcohol tolerance. Sometimes. Anyway, what I meant was the marked men employ a nice mix of ranged and melee fighters to help spice up combat scenarios. This is due to them being former soldiers of both the Legion and the NCR. A nice little detail that I like is that some of the NCR dressed markmen use melee weapons, whereas some of the Legion's ones prefer guns. Shows they use what they can as they work together. Fortunately for me, this is the railroaded DLC where you are pretty much confined to following a single path. That means a good chunk of the areas where you encounter the marked men are in rather boxed in environments. Varied units or not, if Raiden gets within chopping distance at this stage, you're done. After getting the laser detonator, the piece of equipment that I still can't decide to this day if it invalidates a weapon restricted run or not, we begin pushing forward and face our first mini-boss. His name is Blister and he uses a flamer. Gross. That's about all I have to say on him, as my very first attack turns his legs to jelly, allowing the follow-ups and VATS to end the fight before he even gets a chance to start. The rest of his men share a similar fate, although I do feel for the one trying to fend me off with a flare gun. I know your pain, brother. Pressing on, and we have our first run-in with the tunnelers, which the game tries to make seem more threatening than they really are, by having them kill a nearby Deathclaw in a scripted segment. I understand that they're meant to have strength in sheer numbers, and that's kinda showcased later on for the elevator segment, but I just don't think the technology was there in 2010 for Obsidian to implement them how they wanted. Even Ulysses talks about how they will all but cover the Mojave in a few years like a plague of locusts, yet the most you will ever really encounter at a time is like 4 or 5. On the highway it's more marked men, but what's really making my palms prematurely sweat was the incoming Deathclaws. Turns out I may have been worried for nothing, as one of them gets instantly swept to the ground and dealt with in a similar manner to Blister, whereas the other one gets crippled and zapped to death by Eddie. I'll say it how it is. I got insanely lucky that just about every Deathclaw I fought from here on out seemingly had butter under their feet, as they just couldn't resist the Super Slam for the life of them. Typically I need to keep myself topped up with turbo to abuse them like this, but not this time. Next up on the Metal Gear comparisons is that we get tricked into launching a nuke, much like Snake in Metal Gear Solid 1, only for it to then explode mid-air. Which I guess was kind of like Saldus' plan in Sons of Liberty with the hydrogen bomb to take Manhattan offline. I am sorry if this is all nonsense to the non-Metal Gear fans watching. I am obsessed with those games if it wasn't obvious by now. Anyway, next is that elevator section I mentioned with the tunnelers. It's not as difficult as I remember, but then again, I was actively running around to get them either before or as soon as they climbed onto the lift, which certainly helped out a lot. After this, there's more fighting and scalping of the marked men, some more run-ins with tunnelers, and then I get just absolutely decimated by a single landmine. All of this culminates with Ulysses picking up the mic once more to exclaim how much of an idiot I am for bringing Eddie to him. He then steals our robo-buddy and leaves us all alone. I'm sad for about a microsecond before I level up, reach 24, and can finally obtain the Slayer perk. This is what I was talking about earlier. This is the one that will increase my attack speed by 30% with all melee weapons. Couple that with the speed increases we already have, and as you can see, the blender has just entered overdrive mode. We could technically push it even further beyond with some homebrewed drugs, but honestly, what we have now is more than enough. If not a tad overkill given how easily I cube the nearby Deathclaws. Feeling a bit overconfident, I stroll on into the nearby cave, all ready to push in Roar. Here is how that goes.
This will keep you on your feet.
As it is, I have finally been humbled, as now I am the one with the slippery shoes. Attempt number 2, and I have a slightly better time fighting back with VATS. Only issue now is that one swing from him is enough to just knock me out of it. Sure, I can quickly re-enter as I still have my action points, but as he is all too eager to demonstrate, he does more than enough damage to just kill me outright in VATS. Okay, third time's the charm, and I decide to go with the ancient tried and true technique of eating one of every 8 item in your inventory and just seeing what happens. I start with VATS again, as it worked decently well before, only this time I strictly use the katana's unique move, Unlaboured Flawlessness. I get knocked away again, but I can get back into VATS before the follow-up, and either due to the stars aligning or the game taking pity on me, one of them is enough to proc Super Slam and sweep the beast off of its feet. Once I'm in control, I quickly rush over and make use of Slayer to lay as much damage on as fast as I possibly can, so that I may kill Roar before he has a chance to get back up. It was a tough fight. Ultimately pointless for this run as I can't make use of his unique Deathclaw gauntlet, but still I wanted to test my build on him and I am satisfied with the results. Problem is, showcasing that I was able to take down Roar after only 3 attempts should pretty much tell you everything you need to know about the rest of the handful of enemy encounters before the final confrontation with Ulysses. All you really need to know about what happened between those 2 fights is that I got Eddie back, and this is very important for what is about to come next. Ulysses, of course, has clearly spent a long time planning this speech of his. Unfortunately for him, it's just going in one ear and out the other with Raiden right now. The time for talk is over. It's time for the clashing of ideologies, of bone and sinew, courier versus courier. Who will emerge victorious after the no doubt long and grueling Oh. Well, with Clumsy having offed himself, all that leaves is dealing with the nuclear missile. He was planning to fire it at the NCR, which gives us the options to either leave it on its course, switch it to nuke the Legion, or fire another missile and hit both. Or, thanks to saving Eddie earlier, he can offer to stay behind and sacrifice himself to cancel the launch altogether. With that being the best choice for the run, what with the whole nuclear war bad thing, we sadly leave Eddie to his fate and then hightail it out of there to safety. We then watch yet another slideshow, finishing the oh, yeah, wait, no, I've still got to finish the main quest. Well, back to it. To be fair, there isn't all that much left to do outside of some busy work in the main quest. I did finally remember that I was supposed to pick up Rex like 10 hours ago, so I made that my first port of call along with GI Blues. Did that the peaceful way if it wasn't obvious. That way I can easily settle things with the Kings and the NCR. It also means I'll be heading to Red Rock in a moment to deal with the cans. But I figured getting Rex wasn't enough, and that I could go the extra mile to Jacobstown and get him fixed up. That also meant getting him a suitable brain replacement first to cut down on the backtracking once I get to Mutieville. I decided to not go for the extra damage from Ray today, as that's what I normally do, and instead went about decimating the fiends so that I could get Violetta's drug-addled brain for the speed boost. Another reason I did this was because I just completely forgot I already had the extra defense brain from the Legion mongrel back at the fort. Ah well, if Rex is acting as the surrogate for Blade Wolf, him getting the speed boost makes the most sense, seeing how after Blade Wolf teams up with Raiden, he is relegated to scouting ahead. After the successful brain transplant, I figured it was only fair that I help out Dr. Henry with his own problems, so off I ran to the nearby cave to hunt down the chewed up stealth boy, as well as trying my best to survive Night Stalkers, who were so vicious this time around, simply getting bit by one was enough to crash the game. After returning to Henry, this leads to an encounter with Keen, as I am way too stubborn to let the Nightkin melt their own brains, plus I lack the speech to convince them that they are being rash. I am far past the point where unarmed Nightkin are a concern, so I create and clean up the mess, finish the quest, and then set back off south to meet up with the cans, all the while hoping they do not shoot me on sight for how events transpired in Boulder City. Granted, now that I think about it, I never lost any rep for killing them all, probably because nobody was alive to report back. The trip to the canyon was the same as ever, including the scripted attack by Legion Assassins Group number 30 due to the regicide that I committed prior. To do something I rarely do, I will compliment this band. They decided to attack from a distance and from the high ground. Master Kenobi would be proud. Sadly for them, the stealth suit is addicted to poking Raiden full of holes and filling said holes with healing juices, so I can tank even their well thought out assault without too much hassle. Rex is still here doing his thing, by the way, mainly just stands around and growls, but that's alright. He can be emotional support. At the canyon, I talk with Papa, who is not all too pleased about me telling him it's time to side with the people who went full episode 2 Anakin on their women and children at Bitter Springs. That's 2 Star Wars references in less than a minute. Maybe it's time for another Star Wars based character run. The last 2 were quite beloved. Anyway, while he may not see Powerline with me, that is a very stupid reference, his right-hand man Regis is willing to cooperate should I find him some proof that the Legion do in fact be evil. This is easily done by showing Papa Carl's journal calling them all savages, helping Diane and Jack by freeing Anders from a lifetime of deadly T-posing, and finally speaking with Melissa and convincing her that all female cans will essentially be made slaves or wives for Legion officers. If you are wondering how I got past all of the Deathclaws to talk with Mel, simple. I just popped my active camouflage, which I got for beating the game undetected, and crouch walked on past them until I reached the can camp. With his advisors convinced that siding with the football players armed with rusty machetes against the military force with assault rifles is a very bad idea, Papa relents and asks that I perform one last task for him. This is simply getting him a book on the Mongols, whom of course the Khan's entire identity and look is based on. With the book in hand, Papa mentions he and his tribe will leave the Mojave before the Second Battle of Hoover Dam, with Raiden essentially just hitting him with a big thumbs up before continuing on his way. Alrighty, next up, the O Muertes. Look, I was very, and I mean very tempted to just walk in and start slicing every suit-wearing degenerate I laid eyes on. But as the casino is filled with civilians, I did not want to risk cutting any of them down by mistake. So I opted to do this the old-fashioned way of agreeing to help Kachino stage a coup against his bosses. I deal with Clandon and Troik as per usual, and then it's off to Nero and Big Sal so that we can settle things. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kachino isn't exactly a saint either, and you would be correct. The plan was to deal with him afterwards. Fortunately, that problem took care of itself, as in the ensuing shootout, Kachino was gunned down within the opening seconds by Sal. Sure, this meant I was left alone to take them both out with my fists, seeing how I didn't get my weapons back, but that ended up being a lot easier than expected. Nero can't take too many punches before he decides to go sleeping with the fishes, but then, in a bizarre twist as I take the fight to Sal, suddenly one of the other random Omerta thugs, I guess seeing the golden opportunity to run the casinos, shoots and kills Sal from the next room. No complaints here, I assume the rest of the Omertas will now all just murder each other in a desperate grab for power, so go me. Next up is to deal with House, and in what I think is a first for these runs, I haven't dealt with him beforehand, so I actually get the full dialogue from the Colonel informing me to take him out. Finally making use of stealth again, I silently get behind all of the Securitrons and take them out one at a time with the sneak attacks. The only two this doesn't work for are the two guarding the doors to the antechamber, because as soon as you open the secret wall, they become immediately hostile. Not to worry, outside of when I need to close the gap between us, they don't manage to inflict too much damage. Making it down to Mr. Old and Decrepit, and I decide to just snuff him out with a nearby terminal. He reminds me a lot of Zero from the ending of Guns of the Patriots, so this felt rather fitting in a weird macabre kind of way. With House down, all that leaves is the cleaning up of the final faction, that of course being the Brotherhood of Steel. Running straight to the bunker has us captured and fitted with an explosive collar and told to deal with the Ranger, naturally. Keeping with doing things I've never tried before in my videos, I book it over to Dobson and explain the entire situation. He is skeptical at first, but does remove the bomb collar thankfully. He is about to take me back to his bunker so that I can explain things in more detail, but right at that moment, 4 heavily armed Brotherhood paladins swoop out from behind a nearby rock looking for a fight. All the upgrades, perks and otherwise lead to this being a very short and one-sided encounter. Takes around 3 to 4 slashes per paladin, and thanks to some assistance from Blade Mode, I can do all of this without Dobson getting involved, allowing him to live to fight another day. I was hoping he would help me storm their bunker, seeing how I am under direct orders from his superiors to do so. Sadly, that is not the case, as he is intent on returning to base and telling them info that will be obsolete in the next 3 minutes. Yeah, the Brotherhood were pushovers this go around. They weren't all as brittle as the few who tried to attack me and Dobson, but they weren't that much better. Truthfully, the only part I was worried about was being in the firing line of the turrets, as I lacked the science skill to deactivate them. That said, they are stationary turrets, so simply moving out of the way behind a nearby wall renders them all but useless. Fighting the entirety of the Brotherhood ended up proving to be beneficial in the long run, as the initiates on the bottom floor all wear recon armor, which I can then use to fix up the stealth suit thanks to jury rigging. Only other point worth mentioning is that I hit level 29 here. This level in and of itself isn't important, but of course, as I mentioned earlier, level 30 will be, which I should hit just before starting the final assault. Before that though, and after we blow up this basement, we are tasked with saving President Kimball. Alright, look. Raiden has quite the interesting track record when it comes to politicians. That being, they all die after coming into contact with him. 2 of which he kills himself. With that in mind, and wanting to play this as lore accurately as possible to the character, I stand around as clueless as everyone else is until President Kimball decides he no longer vibes with this universe and promptly pops like a water balloon. The most bizarre thing to come out of all of this is that I am not even penalized. On the contrary, I am now idolized. Okay. On to the final assault, and after Oliver is done yapping, I get the XP from finishing the previous quest, finally hit level 30, and can now complete the last of my personal tasks for the run as I grab what I consider to be the final cybernetic enhancement. That, of course, being the Implant GRX. This is a personal mini turbo that I now have access to up to 5 times per day. It only slows time for around 2 seconds, but considering just how fast we attack, that is more than enough. This is about to be one of those rather anticlimactic endings to the run, as, let's not kid ourselves, ever since I returned from Lonesome Road, or hell, before I even left, I have been a force of nature just cutting a path through the entirety of the Mojave with very little able to slow me down. This extends to the Legate himself. I saved 2 uses of the implant for the encounter, as I initially thought that just 2 seconds wouldn't do much against him given how much health that he can have. What I did not account for some reason, was that Super Slam took effect right after the very first swing. As soon as that happens, it is curtains for the Legate. Considering the entire fight was over in less than 5 seconds, and before he could transition into his second phase, this means outside of the 2 Praetorians up above, no other reinforcements were able to be called. I'm sorry, I meant called. Or did I? With that, we approach the gate, speak with General Oliver, finishing the game for real this time, and proving yes, you can indeed beat Fallout New Vegas as Raiden. Do I need to say it? Of course I enjoyed myself with this one. Not only did it become disgustingly broken, much quicker than I would have imagined, mind you, but I also got to do a run revolving around Metal Gear, which we all know I really love by this stage. Only thing better would be a legit Metal Gear run in one of the games. Speaking of which, I'm hoping to do another Metal Gear video before the Snake Eater remake comes out in August. I have an idea for a Phantom Pain video, so hopefully I can get that together before then. But we shall see. Hell, you know what might be an interesting video? Just, can I beat Metal Gear Survive? Just that's it. I've never done it. Who knows? Regardless, that's going to be the end of the challenge video. If you enjoyed what you saw, consider giving the video a like. If you're interested in more challenges in the future, feel free to subscribe. I'm trying to run these videos out fairly frequently. My name's Nerbit. Stay safe, everyone. I'll see y'all in the next video.